Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, give me a moment. Let me check, make sure I'm up. I hope everyone is doing okay today. Shout out to Gordon DeMac for coming on to the show and explaining what was taking place for British politics. Dude, you are immensely appreciated. You had a lot of people who saying that guy's awesome, so definitely check out Gordon. And if you enjoy the content, you enjoy what I'm putting down, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the show through Patreon or Super Chat. Either one is great. So we have elections going on all across the nation today. There's one going on in Virginia. There's a spook running, in addition to another guy who's not supporting health care. So because neither one of those people are supporting health care, neither one of those people are going to get my vote. There's that. As for the elections that are taking place in other places, one of the elections that is taking place across the nation, not today, but it's coming up, is going to be in New York. There's a rat in our midst. I'm going to call it a traitor. To some degree, you can even say it's treachery. There is a rat in our midst. Treasonous. You can even make the term, I don't necessarily think would be too far to go, depending upon the way you're using the term treasonous. That rat is named Khanna. I've been okay, for the most part, with Khanna. I haven't necessarily taken a bad or good feeling. I've heard him say some really good things. I've heard him say some weird things from the standpoint of trying to support, what's her name that's in California? Kamala Harris. I am not a Democrat, but I voted Democrat all of my life up until maybe a few years ago. I am a lefty's lefty. And I've made this argument that you vote for the person who you believe represents your interests. The reason I use the term rat or treachery in this is because Khanna has ran this race, for the most part, supposedly as a lefty. And in running this race as a lefty, he's affiliated himself with Justice Democrats. Justice Democrat is an outfit not necessarily run by TYT, but TYT probably made those guys famous, of people who were boarding the ship and taking the ship back. They're taking the helm of the ship back. They're reinstalling the Democratic Party. Like Angel being reinstalled by a bunch of gypsies. That's supposed to be the goal. That's supposed to be what's taking place. Cenk Uygur has consistently said, I've heard him on more than one occasion say, primaries is what's important. Even as he was making the argument for voting for Hillary Clinton, one of the things, if I'm not mistaken, was primaries are utterly important. They are completely important. Because the time when you get the opportunity to really make your impact are in the primaries. Now forget the fact that who's putting these candidates up and why all of a sudden do you see certain people pop their heads up. Forget the fact that you have the Democratic Party, the DCCC, in some cases putting their thumb on a scale in many of these places before the people get their say. But whatever. Their goal is to reinstall the Democratic Party by running candidates who are going to represent certain things like a single payer, Medicare for all, whatever you want to call it, universal health care, universal education. In the same way that we support education up to a certain point, let's add a few years to it, and let's just say people can go to college free in some of these places. You support candidates who represent those things, because those are the things that you want to see affected on the world. And by putting those people in, you make the point clear that a new world is possible. How can you get those people in, however, if they're not voted for in the primaries? Explain to me. Do you remember that odd feeling you got when Bernie Sanders was running in Massachusetts and Elizabeth Warren wouldn't support Bernie Sanders? And when you looked at this, you was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. You racked your brain for this. This makes no sense. Politically, these two are supposed to be in somewhat of alignment. TYT, when Cenk Uygur had that crummy interview with Elizabeth Warren, and she asked Elizabeth Warren, bringing this question up in somewhat of a perfunctory way, Elizabeth Warren deflected to, I thought it was an awesome race. Now, the same person who said they thought it was an awesome race and this was a spirited thing between these two candidates dodged that question of why didn't you support the person who was closely and more politically in line with you during that primaries, seeing as most likely Sanders, with your support, might have won Massachusetts. The follow-up question to that would have been, a lot of people think it was politically motivated and you wanted to have an end with Hillary Clinton, who you assumed would win the race, and you were being politically inclined to do something that if everything else was removed from it, you would be more inclined to do. Cenk Uygur didn't ask that question. Cenk Uygur went ferreting away into something else that had dick to do with the dick. The same person who said this was a great spirited race, a few weeks or months later ends up saying they rigged it, and then once they put the screws to her, comes back and say on the news they didn't rig it. Looking crazy. Donna Brazile out there again looking crazy, trying to explain how it wasn't quite rigged, and yet her piece says it was. Look, my point is, Elizabeth Warren, under any scenario when you're talking about bankers, awesome. She is the person who would hit a banker in the throat in a heartbeat. I don't know if there was some kind of weird experience where she was a child and she internalized that in her head in the same way that people internalize, like guys who like women to step on cockroaches. I don't know if it's something like that. Something happened as a kid. They took her lollipop. They popped her balloon. Some asshole plutocrat banker, and she's grown up with this thing in her head that she was like, I just want to hit a banker. I don't know what that was. I trust Elizabeth Warren on issues of bankers. On other issues, I trust her as a political animal, which means I don't trust her at all. I don't like that. I don't like that feeling of looking at somebody as being somewhat of a political animal because they're not necessarily going to the things where they're more politically inclined. Enter Ro Khanna, Justice Democrat Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna, for whatever reason, has decided to endorse Crowley. Now, Crowley is one of the candidates that's running in New York as opposed to supporting and endorsing the other Justice Democrat that's in the race that's running in New York. You would think both of these people are Justice Democrats. One person is a corporatist who is essentially a party boss who is installed in his position. The other person, how do you pronounce the name? Ocasio-Cortez. It's fucking awesome. The woman is phenomenal. You look at the things that she represents and you look at the things that the other person represents and you say to yourself, wait a minute. How on earth is Ro Khanna not supporting this woman who is more politically inclined supposedly with the things that Ro Khanna says he believes in, but the other person? Ro Khanna was confronted on this on Twitter. He had an interesting response. He said, I'm not taking corporate PAC money. And somebody makes the point to him, yes, but the person you're endorsing is. And how on earth are you endorsing somebody that is when you guys are trying to change the Democratic Party? And board the ship. We're boarding the ship. But I'm going to put in this corporatist hack who doesn't necessarily support the things that I say I represent. Joe Crowley complains about his primary opponent making the race about race. This is rich. The problem that Joe Crowley is confronting here, and I'm going to do this as a separate because I don't want this to go too long. What he's complaining about here is not that she's making it about race. The Democratic Party makes those races about race all the time. It is the thing that they run on. What the problem that he's finding here, and I love this, a party boss, a guy who's installed by a party boss, complaining about race, white, under normal circumstances, him being a white, him being a male is an advantage, with, however, the exception being in the Democratic Party, who's hug identity to such a degree that when he's running against somebody who's of a different race, he's having problems. And he considers it to be a disadvantage that he's white. That's fucking amazing. That's amazing. No, the problem here, buddy, is that under normal circumstances, you're running against some other corporatist hack that you guys can dick around, whereas in this case, she's making this race about policy. And as a Democrat, your policy just doesn't add up. That's the problem here. You can't deal with the fact that the race that she's running has policy issues. In fact, right here, just to go through some of what's her name's positions. And I looked up Crowley's website. We're going to look at Crowley's website so you can see what I mean. If Crowley positions himself as a photo negative of the president, Ocasio-Cortez is a different medium altogether. A 28-year-old woman and a daughter to a Puerto Rican mother and Bronx father, Ocasio-Cortez's most notable novelty is arguably not her demographic profile, but her policy profile. She calls for the abolition of the U.S. Immigration and Customs, essentially ICE, Medicare for all, tuition-free public colleges, a federal jobs guarantee, a criminal justice reform. Now, it doesn't take 100 years to do this, she intones in a viral video campaign. It takes political courage. Crowley, though, when talked about the campaign, shared his frustration over what he perceives to be an inordinate focus on ethnicity. Fact is, the reason he's making this about ethnicity is because he can't deal with the issues of policy, which is what he doesn't like. And just to look at his policy right here. I have a red line. My red line is, if you're not supporting Medicare for all, we have nothing else to discuss. Period. Now, if everybody else who's a Democrat had that red line, the Democratic Party would either implode or the Democratic Party would uniformly support Medicare for all. None of this fucking around stuff about Obamacare and all this other stuff. No, I'm done. So it's weird to me that another Justice Democrat who has this particular, at the very least, political ideological bend of wanting people to be able to get health care is supporting somebody that's not. This is Joe Crowley's his website, Congressman Crowley.house.gov, unless somebody else changed it. All Americans deserve access to affordable and high-quality health care. A Republican would say the same thing, by the way. So just to be clear with that first sentence. Though through legislation such as the Affordable Care Act, Congressman Crowley has supported efforts to expand coverage, reduce costs, and put health care in the hands of patients and not health insurance companies. While much of the recent health care debate focused on our nation's health insurance system, Joe has also been an impassioned advocate for the local health care facilities in the Bronx and Queens. The continuing focus and operation of local hospitals, community health clinics, and medical centers are essential to the continued well-being of residents in the 14th Congressional District. You know what I don't hear? I don't hear Medicare for all. I don't hear single payer. I don't hear any of that. However, when I hear Ocasio-Cortez, she calls for Medicare for all. That lines up with my political values. This does not line up with my political values. It's nice that you believe people should have health care. I'm pretty sure the Republicans would say the same thing. At the very least, they would say the same thing. What about education? Education is the key to a lifetime of success and is essentially our nation's future. Joe supports a comprehensive approach to education that begins with strong early childhood programs, continues robust K through 12, and makes college more affordable and accessible to all Americans. Joe believes in investing in education that has never been more important. Investment today will lay the cornerstone of tomorrow. Wait a minute. Ocasio-Cortez, tuition-free public college. Other countries have it. Why can't we? She's for it. I don't hear this on that page. I hear this is a lot of bullshit on this page. That's what I hear. You go down the list. What about immigration? Oh, nothing. She's calling for the abolition of ICE. I don't understand. Khanna on Twitter is defending his support. I'm disappointed to hear your comments about race in our primary. Today at 10 a.m., Ocasio has a consciousness-raising session for our white supporters who wish to be better allies. Look, cut the identity shit out. Understand that you have a particular demographic, and that's perfectly okay. A consciousness-raising session is dramatically unnecessary, and I understand you're trying to highlight the fact that he's completely out of sync in this, but you're going to have a cultural bend just by virtue of who you are. Your policies and everything else is going to lean in a particular direction to the left. That's a good thing. You're dead on and on point from the standpoint of your policies. Highlighting the fact that he's white to some degree in an odd way plays into what he's talking about here. Can we not do it? That's all. A consciousness raising session is completely unnecessary. But whatever, do your thing, run your campaign. Right here. But by the way, that being said, what's his name making this about race is just as pathetic. And the fact that Crowley is making this about race, he's doing that because on policy, he's busted. He's busted. My issue here is not so much that Crowley is busted on policy. It's not so much that this is the first time he's had an actual race in a very long time. It's not because the Democrats usually can say somebody's racist, sexist, homophobic, and all this other stuff. And he can't say that here, so he's stuck having to deal with somebody from the standpoint on policy. And just like they tried to make Bernie Sanders' race an issue, in that race, literally, tried to make him the white candidate, he's doing something similar here, trying to castigate her, saying she's making race an issue. She just so happens to be a particular demographic. Deal with it. Deal with it. The issue here is not how he's running a race. The issue here is why Khanna is supporting him, and the idea that a Justice Democrat is knifing and putting a knife in another Justice Democrat. That is amazing to me. Khanna explains himself on Twitter. Khanna, why are you supporting this dude? Says Nick Langley. Adam Peterson. Khanna is supporting Representative Crowley. Always in the back of my mind, didn't trust Khanna as a progressive. This confirms it. He better get the message and support Alexandria, or he will be the next fake to be ousted. And Khanna comes in. I work with Crowley on his supporting decriminalization of marijuana. That's good. I agree. He's helping get others on board with Medicare for all. What are you talking about? I'm looking at his page. This says nothing about Medicare for all. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? He's working on Jobs for All plan. I like Alexandria and I admire her story. My support for Crowley is based on my interaction with progressive issues. Here's the thing. I'm going to have to believe what you're saying, and he doesn't have this on his pages at all. Now, is it possible that he moved to the left in order to deal with the issue of Ocasio because he didn't feel like he should deal with it on a policy? Maybe. And if he did have to move to the left because of it, do I trust him? No. No. People say whatever they need to get elected. No, I don't. I don't. He's been in Congress for how long? For how long? Let's keep going. It always go back to follow the money no matter what policies they claim to represent in public. Ideological, 26,000. Labor, 163,000. Business, whoa, look at that amount. That's such a magnificent amount. Look at this, look at this. $1 million. Compared to, who do you think he's listening to? 84% of your money are coming from plutocrats. Who do you think he's listening to? Labor is stupid for giving him anything. And I suspect they need to turn their efforts into actually coming up with something or someone that actually represents their interests, that are not bought. Khanna, I don't personally take PAC or lobbyist money. I'm one of the only incumbents to support primary challenges. But I think we need a broad coalition to make progressive policy into law. So, you are admitting that he is part of a quote-unquote broad coalition, which means he is not necessarily standing beside you. The argument that you're making is he is somewhere else and he is somewhat separate and distinct from the lefty who's running in the race. If this guy was a lefty, as you claim up here, then that would not necessarily be a quote-unquote broad coalition because that person would be standing beside you shoulder to shoulder. Which one is it? Is it a broad coalition from the standpoint of the killbots, those people who are further to the right? Or is he standing beside you representing those issues that Ocasio-Cortez is representing? I don't see this on his page. I'm sorry, Khanna, I don't see it. And not just not seeing it on the page, the phraseology of a broad coalition gives me this impression that he is not one of us. And by us, I just mean a lefty. You may not take PAC money, but Joe Crowley does. That's why your supporters are finding it strange you're endorsing a corporate puppet over a true progressive. I hope now that you know your supporters don't agree with your endorsement, you will reconsider it and do the right thing. How do you reconsider an endorsement? It's too late. I respect your view. I supported Bernie. Again, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. You're utterly missing the point. I don't care if you're friends with Joe Crowley. I don't care if you've worked with Joe Crowley on certain legislations. I don't care. I don't care in the least. I'm sick of this thing of that's my buddy, and because that's my buddy, I'm going to support him, even if that guy is not in line with what supposedly the boarding the ship mentality meant. Are you boarding the ship or not? And if you're boarding the ship, how on earth are you supporting some corporatist hack that you're trying to take along with you? He's part of the people that you're supposed to be kicking off the boat. Which one is it? Who do you represent? What are your values? I don't care if Crowley is your friend, Khanna. If you're telling me that you're boarding the boat and you're telling me I don't take corporate PAC money, that's good for you, but the guy who you're supporting does. And there's somebody in the race that doesn't. And there's somebody else in the race that's also is supposed to be one of you, one of the Justice Democrats that's supposed to be reinstalling the party. And if that Justice Democrat is supposed to be boarding the ship, she's supposed to be boarding the ship and taking somebody else's spot. Who on the earth do you represent? I don't care if he's your buddy any more than I care that Tom Perez and what's his name were buddies when Tom Perez gave that scandalous endorsement. I don't care if he's your buddy any more than I cared about Elizabeth Warren making a political decision not to endorse Bernie Sanders. I'm sick of these guys being buddies. I'm sick of the friendship stuff. Either you're going to board the ship or not. Which one is it? Which one is it? There's more. I respect your view. I supported Bernie, and since many progressives, I think Crowley can be effective in building consensus for key progressive priorities. But I like Alexandria and appreciate your support for her. Thanks for the feedback. Tell me, what's the point in not taking corporate PAC money if you're just going to support someone that takes corporate PAC money over someone who doesn't? Isn't that contradictory? I mean, you may as well take all the help you can from corrupt corporate interests if you're just going to support puppets. There are only 7 of us in the entire house who didn't take PAC money. Again, you're missing the point. It's not about you. I think that's big enough stand. If I refuse to support any of my colleagues, I would not build a coalition. You are missing the point, sir. The point that the people are trying to make to you is, this is not in the abstract of I'm supporting some other random Democrat in the race. There may not be a slew of Justice Democrats for each and every race that takes place in Congress. In this very specific race, there is one person who supposedly is more politically aligned with the group that you yourself are politically aligned with. And there's somebody who's a corporatist hack. It's not a race where both people are hacks. The race of Virginia, I have one woman who is essentially a spook, a former spook, and another guy who's essentially just a random Democrat who just came out the woodwork. Neither of them support Medicare for all. My wife was in a car trying to find the thing where she heard single payer, and ultimately it was a support for Medicare for Obamacare. If you had to make a choice in this race, well, there isn't a Justice Democrat in the race. Doesn't matter. Choose whoever you want. Both these guys are fundamentally the same. I don't care who wins. But this is different. You have the opportunity to actually support somebody who is a Justice Democrat. And people are inquisitive about this because they don't quite understand why this person who supposedly lines up with your values, you're not supporting. The excuse of, I don't take corporate PAC money, I don't know what that has to do with the price of tea in China. They're asking you something very specific. And this weird refrain that you keep repeating as if it's some kind of bulletproof shield, I don't accept corporate PAC money, you're missing the point. Or maybe you get the point, but you don't necessarily want to answer the question. I don't care if you guys are buddies. I don't care if you guys are friends. If you guys are boarding the ship as the Justice Democrats continuously screams at the top of their lungs, then that means you're taking somebody else's spot. The idea that you're willing to support some hack when there is somebody else in the race that actually lines up with your values is problematic at best. There is a petition of people trying to get Ro Khanna recalled as a Justice Democrat. Ro Khanna's Justice Democrat status shall be revoked for endorsing corporate corruption in New York's 14. This is change.org. I usually think these things are pointless. But from the standpoint of having a large number of people saying we don't like this and giving their stamp of disapproval for what Ro Khanna is doing, I perfectly understand it, and it's fair enough. Justice Democrats have gotten to the point where Justice Democrats don't even support Justice Democrats. That's pretty sad. The organization has just started, and right off the bat, you already have a rat in your midst. That rat is named Ro Khanna. I'm going to end it on this. I'm not going to keep this one much longer. I'm going to end this. This one is gone. Holy shit, we've gone an hour and 20 minutes. I'm going to have to cut this video. That's what I need to start doing in my videos. I get more out of them when I do it. So I will end this here, guys. I appreciate you guys coming to my random pointing out of Ro Khanna. Yeah, I appreciate it. And let's see. And just so I'm clear, I give a heads up. Matthew B. Squad, Ray Foley, Joel Sass, Sir Bike Salat, and Rob. Guys, thank you very much, man. I appreciate your support for the channel. It's absolutely appreciated. You guys have a nice one. And you know, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and you can always support the Patreon. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.